My name is Sandor Savos. I'm Hungarian.
My name is Alice Harford. I'm American.
Delighted to meet you, Alice. Did you ever read the Latin poet Ovid on the art of love?
Didn't he wind up all by himself, crying his eyes out, in some place with a very bad climate?
But he also had a good time first. A very good time. Are you here with anyone tonight, Alice?
With my husband.
Oh, how sad. But then I'm sure he's the sort of man who wouldn't mind if we danced.
You see that girl over there?
Which one?
The one who's pretty swishy there, kind of leaning on the buffet table.
Oh yeah, fit.
She runs that art gallery on Broome Street, I think.
Is that her?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, that's Alice. Yes. Nice.
Very nice. She came around at my job last week looking for some work. I showed her around.
Ah, where did you take her? To the storeroom?
Yeah, no. Look, she's over there. Oh, look. She just spotted the doc flirting with Gay and Noor. Look at that.
Who's the doc?
Her husband, Bill Harford.
Ah, Bill Harford. I know him.
He's an asshole. Owes me $20.
Really?
At least.
Wow. What's he been doing for you?
It's just, it's a typical gambling problem, these guys. I mean, but in his case, it's scratch-offs, you think he'd have at least, like, a classy gambling addiction.
So many answers we may never know. Too many questions, get on with the show. No time for the chorus, only this verse. It's Kubrick's universe.
Open the podcast doors, Hal.
It's Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in once again to Kubrick's Universe. Okay, we've got our year in review show for you coming up. Year being 2019, and my friends being with us, James Marinaccio, Mark Lentz, and Stephen Rigg. How's it going, fellas?
Pretty good.
Super.
Excellent.
Okay, guys, so first things first, back in February of 2019, the 26th to be exact, a new book, a really cool new book called The Kubrick Legacy Book was released, and our friend James Marinaccio was one of the contributors. Tell us about it, man.
It's a small book. It's small and expensive. It's more of an academic book. It's an anthology book, I guess you call it, where different people wrote different chapters. Mm-hmm. And the editor, Mick Broderick, who we all know, who did one of these podcasts and wrote, what was the title? Reconstructing
Strangelove, yeah.
And he wrote 2 of the 3 of the chapters and was the editor. So I had the pleasure of writing one of the chapters, Kubrick Tropes in Advertising. So it's basically an academic book, only 116 pages. Only the first edition is out in hardcover, and it's kind of like $40, kind of expensive, though the ebook is only like $10. Hopefully it'll come out in paperback at some point, a little more affordable. Mm. But some of the topics are, well, if anyone's Googling it, you have to put in that S. It's Kubrick's Legacy, because when you just Google Kubrick Legacy, you get a whole bunch of other stuff. It's hard to find.
Oh, okay.
Amazon with that S, Kubrick's Legacy. And Kubrick and Curation is a chapter. The Rise of Dr. Strangelove. Looking Back, Looking Ahead. Kubrick and Music. The Dramatizing Kubrick, Room 237 and Other Conspiracies. Kubrick Tropes in Advertising. Kubrick on Screen. So those are the different chapters. And it was fun working with Mick. A lot of back and forth. A lot of Mick apologizing for delays, which didn't bother me at all. So.
Now, I know that tropes in advertising, Kubrick tropes in advertising is of particular interest to you and a particular specialty of yours. So obviously it's not surprising that Mick would task you with writing that chapter. Do you remember when he first reached out to you?
Yeah, he reached out to Skaggs. This is going back few years. He just put out a general call for papers. Skaggs, I think, was the only person that paid any attention to it, really. And it was, he gave a list of chapter ideas, and I chose that. And some of the ideas that he had didn't even get included. So maybe he has an idea for another book. But I've been copying television commercials go back to the 80s, I think, or at least I didn't. So I already had a lot of research done, and I did more research on that.
Yeah, that's.
I had to do a rewrite because well, if he's the editor, I don't know what you would call the person he was reporting to, the publisher, I guess. They just asked for a rewrite because my first draft was a little listy. It was a little read too much like listing them all. I just had to flesh it out, which I'm glad they pushed me on that because I think the second draft was a lot better.
Yeah, the end result was worth the extra effort. Go on.
I still haven't read that, your chapter 6. The only two chapters I've read so far are The Rise of Dr. Strangelove, and that was a chapter done by Graham Allen, and I read that in preparation for the interview we did with Graham, which we've still got in the archive, but we interviewed Graham, who did chapter 3, and then we also interviewed Mick, who did chapter 7, Kubrick on Screen. We've actually put that one out, I think, haven't we? But we are hoping to get through all 6 contributors, including yourself, James. So that'll be Drew Jeffries, we've done Graham Allen, Christine Gengaro, Manka Perko, James Marinaccio, we've done Mick. So yeah, so that's kind of the plan, to get through the other contributors, because they're all very interesting little topics within the legacy, aren't they, those?
Yeah, I like Christine's a lot. I mean, they were all good, but I remember her chapter about the music that was really enlightening. And overall, it was a little bit of a thrill seeing your name in a book. I've written 8 or 9 magazine articles over the few decades on a freelance basis, but it's cool to see your name in a book, even though I'm not on the front of the book. But the only other time I had my name in the book was James Howard.
Yeah.
Title. He wrote a Kubrick book, and I helped him, and he put me in the acknowledgement before Arthur C. Clarke. What the hell? The Kubrick Companion is the name.
Yes, I've got that, and I've seen your name in there, yes.
Well, also bears mentioning for our listeners that, with the amount of archival, material that James has amassed over the years, I mean, the amount of stuff that you've come up with, from your video, just your years of, running a VCR. And I remember you telling me about, well, those years when you would do that. It seems to me that before we get on to the next topic, I just want to mention that should be archived itself somehow. At some point, it should be saved for posterity, because I can't think of one other person probably in the world who put such attention into documenting all that stuff. And it does matter, I think, for Kubrick's legacy. It's important. Because yeah, I mean, just for me growing up, I'm, not that much younger than you, James, but seeing all the stuff on TV and, the late 70s, really mostly through the 80s and then the 1990s and beyond, it's just obvious that his influence far exceeded, just the world of cinema. But anyway,
I have 112 gigabytes of video clips.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's insane. That's like...
I'd love to help James curate this collection. I mean, he's done a great job of getting it together already. But if we can ever present this archive in the form of a website or something like that, I'd love to get involved with that. But again, James, it's another one of those projects that we want to do, and finding the time to do it. We've got a long list of projects to do relating to Kubrick.
It's not for me to say, but I mean, if it's something that, if I were James, like if I would find a way to just give it to the archives, that officially like have them absorb it, because I feel like Indiana Jones, like that belongs in a museum.
It's all listed, and I've given it to even Rod Monday, Felipe Olveri, and Simone Vino, and we call them the three wise men. Yes. And they all have it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do one more update to it, and at some point, probably the end of next year, and then saving things now is a lot easier than it used to be. What I do is whenever in SCAS, when somebody shares something interesting, I bookmark the thread, and every couple I go through it and I save stuff.
Right.
And I used to do it with VHS and dubbing the top. That was a lot of work. Now everything's electronic.
Yeah.
It's much easier digital. Yeah.
Like the other day, I just grabbed a clip of it was a nice, really, really overt, shining reference in a recent episode of Family Guy. I mean, it wasn't subtle at all. And I said, I got to grab that. And there was another watching Cash Cab, and they had another Kubrick question. It's easy to grab now.
Just as important of actually having these clips that, have been recorded off TV, on VHS, etc. It's just as important to have a list, a physical printable list of all these references. Because if anyone ever wants to go to the source TV companies to find these clips, they can use your research as a printed list to just say, look, that's an episode of The Simpsons on that date. We know who owns all those clips. Even just in printed form, it's brilliant.
Yeah, that fleshing in those details is something that we maybe we'll get to at some point, right?
Yeah,
and not just video. I mean, I have audio and I have articles as well, newspaper, magazine articles.
I think there's a book in this, James.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Listing audio sources, just a reference of everything that's out there in some kind of printed form.
One of the very first Kubrick books was just that, a bibliography of all the other books that had ever been, and articles, and citations. That came out in the late 70s.
Wow.
I don't know where it is now. My professor was mad because they did not list his article. This discussion brings me back to one of my things, which is we are Kubrick's near contemporaries. Maybe we are contemporaries in that we were all alive when he was alive. And this sort of gathering of records and talking to people and doing what we're doing, only we can do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much easier for us to do it rather than for some scholar 40 years from now trying to find stuff.
Yeah.
They may never be able to find it.
Archivio, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Kubrick, the website.
That's Filippo's.
That's Filippo's. That's a very well organized.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great resource. So for the printed, that's kind of mainly printed materials, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got some video too.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of interviews when we had him on our podcast. Like, that was one of the first things out there. And he just did he collected a lot of stuff, but I felt like he also interviewed people. So he was one of the first kind of scholars out there who just interviewed people for the web.
He's still doing interviews now.
Yeah, like now I feel like he's hit his stride. He's got like this, he's got this, what do you call it? Resume? He's got all the cred.
Yeah.
And he's been around for like a good long time. Established 2000, year 2000.
Yeah.
That's pretty early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what he did with his book with Emilio is really, cements his own legacy, because the general reaction, it seems, across the board was that this was the first real book to show the human side, the fatherly side, the husband, etc. That's been touched upon before, but nothing ever to the extent of the book he did with Emilio. And I think a lot of that is, of course, it's Emilio's recollections, but it still takes a great writer to have put across what we got in the form of that book, and then the documentary.
Yeah, and if any of the listeners missed the interview we did with Filippo, it was about episode 4, I think.
It was, yeah.
Episode 4 of Kubrick's Universe. That's well worth a listen, and it really does give you an insight into how, without a good writer like Filippo, the stories from Emilio wouldn't have been translated to the fans, really. Yeah, it did a great job. Yeah, and on just while we're still on the Kubrick legacy, can I just point out for potential people who want to get that book, I believe it's still in its first edition, which is a hardback version, as Jason mentioned. That's currently at £36 in English sterling, or the ebook is available at £7.50, and that'll be a similar price in dollars and euros, because they're not that much different. And that's available from the Routledge. That's ROUTLEDGE, Routledge.com. Over to you, Jason.
That's cool. It was James who mentioned the edition, though, by the way.
Sorry, yes.
No worries. Well, in the meantime, I guess we'll discuss chronologically the next thing that happened in 2019. The biggie, of course, was the 20th anniversary of Stanley Kubrick's passing on March the 7th. We did do a special show, one I'm particularly proud of. I think that show was a home run. I really like the way it was done, and everybody's contributions from the friends we have in Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society to you guys. I think it was just really well done, but I wonder if, we were all, alive and kicking when, Stanley passed in, 1999. And I wondered if, you guys had any recollections of, we've gone through the 20th anniversary. It's come and gone. Mark, do you have any, recollections of how you processed it being the 20th year since we lost him?
Well, just listening to that podcast was very emotional for me, and I think it was a milestone in our podcasts as far as what they're all about. They're done by people who love Stanley Kubrick, who are very knowledgeable about Kubrick, and that really shows through. And the more of them that we do, the more I feel like Jason, you ask such great questions, and I think it benefits the final product greatly. But yeah, that was I can't think of a better way to commemorate Stanley's passing than by doing that podcast. It was great. We got so much great feedback from it.
Yes, we did. That was episode 23. I think we put that out. In March, which was the actual month that he passed.
I guess I would say I discovered Kubrick when I was 20, and then I had 20 years of him making films, and now I've had 20 years of him being passed away.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I did reading Filippo's book. There were a few moments. There were some parts where I got a little sad, and watching Kubrick Remembered, our extra in the Masterpiece Collection Blu-ray set, that there was some moments in that was very touching.
Yeah.
Well, that was actually the day that I resigned as admin. I will always remember that.
Well, on the 7th of March,
I did.
Was it?
Yeah,
right.
I resigned on the 20th anniversary. It wasn't planned that way. I just, you guys knew I had been kind of heading in that direction anyway, and I was fond of my final message to you guys in the admin group, just to, Stanley Kubrick is dead, long live Stanley Kubrick, because I really have, been able to enjoy just getting back to watching his movies and reading about him. And, I want to say how much I, really enjoyed it during my time and will always be grateful. And I can't express enough how much admiration I have for you guys, for anybody who put time in really to doing that, because it is a full-time job and also can be a thankless job. And we brought Mark on board in that same month in March, and I think he's done an absolutely incredible job. I may not be posting as much these days, but I am still there. I'm still present. I'm checking in, and I think everything is just going swimmingly, and that's in no small part due to Mark coming up and helping to steer the ship exceptionally well. And I want to turn it over to Mark and have him share his thoughts about this special job.
Well, thank you, Jason. I didn't know what to expect about the job. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it. I thought, well, it's kind of a chore that I can help out with. But I do really like you don't have to put very much into it. It's just you have to be there every day. But I like that. I like that if anything happens in Kubrick's world, this is like I'll find out about it. That's probably the best thing, is you won't miss anything that's going to happen because it always shows up there.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like for me, it's a simple way to be involved. I couldn't do my New York City meetup this year, so this is a good substitute for that.
Yes, we've had a few admins over the years. Even I had I think I had almost 12 months off when I just couldn't put any time into it because of things I had going on in life. But all four of us here on this call have been admins. James was there pretty much from the beginning. He certainly earned his stripes as well. There's been a few other people. We've had Anthony Adler on board. Who else have we had admins? With Anthony. We haven't had that many. We haven't really kind of just brought people in, have we? Willy-nilly. We've been very selective and very careful over the 8 years now? 2011.
Wow.
November 2011. So 8 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
You launched on November 26th. I think you began the group. I was able to, a while ago, I went back all the way back. It took much scrolling, but I was able to find your first post, and I think the official anniversary is either November 26th or 27th of 2011, the day you launched the group. But
what was the first post?
You should have bumped it.
Yeah,
I know, right? You know what? I can do it. I'll go back in there.
I think I once tried to go back, and I just give up hope because it was just taking too much scrolling.
Yeah,
but I think now, isn't there a little feature on the in the settings where you can find when it was set up, which wasn't there at one point? Maybe
you could search by year, but you have to put only if you put some. Well, if I put Rigg.
Yeah, I wonder what my first post was. It would have been, hi.
And
anybody out there?
Yeah.
So James and Stephen, you've been doing it for so long. How has the group changed over the years?
Well, I did 5 years. It just used to be so much more off-topic stuff, and used to be sillier. We decided to take some advice that somebody gave us, because we had an epic thread one time about beans. Do you remember that?
Beans?
Remember the bean post?
Go on, remind me.
Remember Ewan Sinclair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used to be a very, very active member. And he started this funny thread about taking film titles and changing one word to beans.
Oh, yes.
2001: A Beans Odyssey. But it wasn't just Kubrick. It would be, Last of the Mohique Beans or whatever. And it went on for I mean, there were like 500 or 1,000 people putting jokes, and then somebody with some clout at the time said, "I don't think that this group is more important than that." Right. So we kind of cut down on that. We cut down on the conspiracy groups, and Rigg. I just called you Kubrick. Rigg started Stephen started the other group, the sister group, for conspiracy discussions, and a lot of people. There was a period when a lot of people didn't like the policing of and the censoring, and we just said we don't want to talk about conspiracies here. There, we started another group, and there was a lot of off-topic stuff. Those are the big main three differences.
Well, the biggest complaint we seem to get is, what does this have to do with Stanley Kubrick? That's what I see, what irritates people.
Yeah.
They get irritated by memes.
Memes? What the hell's a meme?
Meme.
Meme. Sorry. That's how I always say it in my head.
But anytime anybody kind of questions the relevance of a post, it generally is explained to them that it has got relevance. Because none of us, as admins, let anything in.
Right.
That we don't find relevant. And as we are quite well educated on the topic, we're a good filter for that. So I think anyone who does complain about the relevance, I think we explain to them what the relevance is 99% of the time, don't we?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, we have about 20 people, 15 maybe, we gave auto approval to.
Oh, yes, we did recently.
Right.
This year for the first time.
Well, the thing with, I just want to add this to the admin discussion is, like, so many other situations you find yourself in so-called real life where at my job, for instance, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, a lot of this ends up coming down to, like, babysitting. Like, if you have to explain to somebody why this is relevant to, a discussion about Stanley Kubrick, because as Stephen said, we are, just fine filters, great arbiters. We understand the subject matter, hope to say, pretty well. And you end up spending, or frankly wasting time, like, getting back to people on a case-by-case basis. It's just time consuming, and you don't want to have to be glad handing everybody, do you? I mean, that was part of what was frustrating for me.
We're also not consistent ourselves. It's impossible to be.
Yeah.
So it's our job, basically.
Yeah.
Is what it is. We try to do our best.
When I know you bowed out, or maybe you're on hiatus, James. When can I ask when you did that? Because I was not super active at the time. I didn't. When was it? September? Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing it for 5 years. We'll see. One other thing I just want to say about adminning is kind of indirect, but in adminning, I like to be. My style was I like to get conversations moving, and I like to post a lot because I want to give content and keep people engaged.
Mm.
So Skaz adminning, it's a big job. Is it a big job? It's a big job if you are trying to put content in there and moderate memberships. I think a good thing that James has done, he's not having to worry too much about approving posts and members. He can concentrate on the thing that he's best at, which is finding the content and putting it in there, which he still is doing. So I think that works well. And as far as myself and Mark, who are still doing the post approvals and membership approvals, you can literally spend 5 minutes a day on that, unless the post requires the post requires a bit more looking into, like if it's a video or an article. But yeah, it's not too bad, and I think we've got a bit of a reputation certainly with the people who've been members for a long time, that they kind of know what to bother us with as far as posts go. New members will come up with stuff that we've seen a million times, but we will approve them just to let the new members feel welcomed, let's say.
And there's a dramatic decrease. I mean, a dramatic decrease in the number of fights starting, the number of people saying, "You're a moron, you're a moron, that's a stupid opinion." They used to happen all the time. And it's not it's just hardly ever happens anymore. Not because we're nipping it in the bud or deleting them. It's just not happening anymore, which I guess is just an organic, I hope to think that's just an organic thing from previous, admin policies we had, and people just know what to do, what not to do, I guess.
I think people who know the group and understand how it works do feel safe and happy and feel like they're in a good place, and that's solely down to the hard work that the admins have put in there for the last 8 years.
If anyone's listening to this podcast, we're talking about the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation.
Yes. Well, Stephen, is there anything you want to add? I mean, it's it's your group, man. So
no, it's our group.
I know. I mean, I know you were going to say that, and I love you for it. But I mean, it's a true gesture. It's wonderful because I know you mean it. But I'm just saying you did start it, and I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on being the admin you've been for so long. Because what James and Mark said is great. I felt like I was just better serving our efforts, our collective work that we do together in this capacity. I love being the host of the show. I love what we do, and I came down to figuring out what was the best way for me to use whatever my skill set might be. I realized it was much better served here. But you've done both and very admirably. You are the producer and the editor of the show. I can just imagine how much time you're putting in to being an admin, because I already know how much time you're putting into doing this as well. So do you ever find it is taken too much, or is there anything that, as the years go by, now that we're doing this, you feel like reflecting on?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say I think you made the right decision, which was putting your spare time. Obviously, you've got a very busy job, and I think when you made the decision to put your 100% into something, you put it into the podcast. I think that was a very good decision you made. As soon as the podcast started, I realised that I would not be able to put as much time into SCAS. Unfortunately for SCAS, the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, James totally stepped up to the mark and not only filled in for me. Well, in fact, that's what he did. He totally filled in for me, so he kind of doubled up what he was already doing at that point. So I've kind of put more time and energy into the podcast because I suppose ultimately I feel that the podcast is a more something that's out there that deserves my attention out of the two. As you know, we've had many a conversation about Facebook being something that might one day just disappear. The plug might be pulled and it's gone. But we do know that with our personal recordings of these interviews and these shows, that, I mean, even if they disappear off the internet, we've still got them in our archive.
Yes.
And they can always, they can always reappear.
Right.
So I suppose, I realised, at the start of the podcast that this is a second thing outside my work that needs some major attention. But fortunately, like I said, well, I mean, everyone who's been involved with looking after Skaz, that's just been fantastic. And sometimes I feel a little bit guilty, it's something that I started, but it's also something that I don't put 100% into, which is the Facebook group. But like I just explained, I think that the podcast deserves the attention that, the time that I've got. We've all got limited time to be doing these kind of things, and I feel that I made the decision that I need to put the hardcore time into the podcast and as much extra time as I've got into the Facebook group. And I could only do that because of the help of the other admins, you three guys, and anyone else who's been involved.
Co-pilot to navigator. I'm ready with a few figures now. We have 109,000 total, 79,000 in the mains, and 30,000 in the auxiliaries. And that works out to roughly 7 hours, 15 minutes endurance for this time.
We lost Shane Rimmer.
Yeah.
Guest number 3.
Yeah, our third episode. Was it the third episode, yeah?
Yes, it was, yeah. He was the third guest we had on the show, and how lucky were we to get him. What a great guy. He was so kind to come on the show, and he was clearly a great entertainer. He knew how to do a radio show, and I was sad when you guys told me he passed.
Yeah, so he passed on the 29th of March this year, and I think we spoke to him probably just before the podcast started, which was late 2017 when we spoke to him.
Stanley was a marvelous director. He found sort of an underflow in his pictures, and you became more and more and gradually aware of what he really was up to. And actually, he was incredibly popular with everybody. The only people he wasn't terrifically popular with was Hollywood, because they never were certain what he was going to do with the picture. But he made so much money for them, they didn't complain very loudly, because he was one of the top filmmakers of that time.
Shane was one of the first kind of, obviously in our early days, before we had any kind of name or presence on the internet, it was a case of trying to find guests who either we knew on Facebook or we knew personally. Yeah. And that wasn't many, but I actually did have Shane Rimmer's email address, because I met him at a kind of a film festival probably about 10 years ago, where it was a signing event, and he was signing mainly photographs of his work on Thunderbirds and the James Bond films. And I turned up at his desk with a picture that I took myself from Dr. Strangelove, and he didn't have any Dr. Strangelove items on his desk, but he was busy mainly with the James Bond and the Thunderbird stuff, the Jerry Anderson stuff, I should say. And he was kind of quite impressed, I think, the fact that I'd turned up with this Dr. Strangelove still, because I don't think anyone had really acknowledged that as part of his career. So we kind of got chatting, and we swapped email address, because he wanted me to send the picture, the still. So we had a few. We kind of had a bit of an email thing going back and forth for a few months. So when it came round to finding some guests who we could approach, I thought, I'll give Shane a shout. So some 7 or 8 years later, I re-emailed him and he remembered me, and that's how we got Shane on the show.
That's so cool.
Boy, that reminds me. Sorry, when we were starting out, we were just thinking of getting people who had worked with Kubrick, but as the years have gone by, like so many people are doing new things about Kubrick, and there's plenty to do with just those people who are writing books, holding conferences, creating new art inspired by Kubrick.
Absolutely. I think we've got about 300 potential guests on our hit list. The names just keep coming, and they're all people, as far as I'm concerned, and I think you guys feel the same. They are all worth talking to.
And the hits just keep on coming.
There used to be a debate whether Kubrick's universe was contracting or expanding, but scientists have found out that it's expanding at an ever-increasing rate.
Nice. Nice. We have 300 known solar systems within our universe.
There's dark Kubrick material that's energizing it.
So, well, how about the... go on.
Sorry. I was just going to say, so anyone who's listening, if there is anyone listening to this show, check out episode 3 for Shane Rimmer. We had a great interview with him. And rest in peace, Shane.
Yeah.
Hear, hear.
I still hear his voice when he said, I called him Mr. Rimmer at the end, and he said, and it's Shane. You call me Mr. Rimmer again, and I'll clobber you.
Yeah.
That just meant, because, that was like my 3rd interview, and I was not super confident, and he just made me feel so good. I'll never forget that. It was probably the first, kind of magic moment that happened for me, where I was like, all right, I can do this.
Yeah.
And it was thanks to him.
We met again 30 years after the picture was shot. His wife was a painter, and a very, very good one, and she arranged a meeting near Oxford. The festival was called Art in Action, and she was showing some pictures, some paintings there. They were very, very good. And she arranged a meeting between myself and Kubrick, and he pulled up in a battered old what was it? Mercedes. That's
Mercedes,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He slid out of the driver's seat, came over, hand outstretched, dressed as he always was in an open check shirt, jeans, and shoes that still needed a buffing. And for a man reputed to have turned almost reclusive, and that was true, unfortunately, he was warm and welcoming and as naturally disarming as I remember him. So we did have a lovely afternoon, and although it didn't go on forever, I think maybe under an hour, and then he was back into his battered old Mercedes. Away he went.
Off he went, yeah, amazing. I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for taking your time and joining us, answering so many questions. You've been so giving with your time.
Stanley is worth it. It was great because he's not going to advertise himself anywhere. So I think it's up to other people to reflect on him and talk about his importance as a film director.
Shane, Mr. Rimmer, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real treat, sir.
Well, it was good. The questions were good, and I think we got the man pretty well showing. He as I say, he certainly deserved it. He was a good fella.
You've just been great. So I hope we've done some justice to you by getting to know more about you as well, Mr. Rimmer. You've been wonderful.
Okay, anytime. And it's Shane. Don't call me Mr. Rimmer. I'll clock you.
Duly noted, sir. All right, that's great.
Okay, lad. Thanks very much. It was a it was a good exposure of the fellow.
Stephen, you were at the Kubrick season event at BFI South Bank in London back in the end of May. Or sorry, end of May.
I think it was a 2-month event from the 1st of April to the 31st of May, literally the whole of April and May. And that was a Kubrick season that they put on there. And I went down, I think I went down twice during those 2 months. I went down to see the opening of, I think it was the first night of the Clockwork Orange re-release on the 5th of April, which was great because Malcolm McDowell was in attendance, and he did kind of a Q&A. Well, he did kind of a talk after the film and a Q&A.
Actually, what happened was we had 8 months or 9 months of pre-production. And for instance, and I will get back to this question, but I'm going to meander a little bit, because he said to me, I said to him, well, Stanley, what am I going to wear? And he goes, I don't know. What do you got? Well, we're doing a film that's supposed to be futuristic. What have I got? I mean, I live in Notting Hill Gate, for Christ's sake. I mean, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I said, well, I've got my cricket gear in the car. And he goes, oh, great, well, let's see it. So I put it on, and he goes, oh, yeah, and what's this? I said, that's the protector. He said, wear it on the outside. And that's basically how that iconic costume came to be. Anyway, so I think when there's so much trust on set between an actor and the director, that you're not afraid to...
It's sort of creating an environment where people will chat and create ideas.
I mean, look, a lot of the actors didn't feel that at all. Pat McGee was like, what the fuck is this guy on about? Right. And there's no Guinness on the set. There's a drink. I said, I'll see if I can do something about that, Pat. When Stanley, McGee's Irish, and he goes, really? Well, why? I went, that's just the way they work, I don't know. Why don't you get some Guinness for him, they put it on the prop truck. So they got a case of Guinness, and I think within 3 days, of course, it had gone. Stanley came to me and he said, well, that was a great idea. I said, well, look how great he is in the park. Yeah. And Pat would say to me, Jesus, does this guy know what he's doing? I said, well, why, Pat? He goes, he's had me in the wheelchair, and he said, I feel like I'm taking a shit, and he wants more and more. I don't know. And of course, it needed to be that kind of craze.
Yeah, that was one of the few changes actually from the book, giving him this strange bodyguard played by Dave Prowse.
Yes.
Do you remember? Or Julian.
I could not forget that.
That was added in the script by Stanley.
Yes, because Stanley wanted there to be, a real heavy kind of bodyguard, and so he picked Dave, I think, from a picture. But it's when David Prowse opened his mouth, that's when we ran into a few problems. He had a West Country voice like that. And a very high voice. You'll excuse me for saying this, but that's probably why they didn't use his voice for Darth Vader. Anyway, look, he had a terrific career from it, and playing Darth Vader's, that's quite something, isn't it? So, but also Kubrick wanted him to lift Pat McGee in a wheelchair, and there was nobody strong enough that could do that. And actually, Stanley managed to ruin poor old Dave Prowse's shoulder, because he had him holding him for 8 hours.
And the day after that, there was a screening also at the BFI of a documentary called Never Apologise, which was also starring McDowell and the producer of that, Mike Kaplan, he was there, so there was a Q&A after that. So that was great. There was various events on, and the BFI did a fantastic job, as they always do. So that was kind of the first thing, and then I went down again in April to coincide with the Stanley Kubrick exhibition, and I watched a few more films there. I watched Full Metal Jacket and Dr. Strangelove in 4K.
Stephen, I remember you once saying you had never met anyone from SCOS at all. Didn't you meet up with a couple of SCOS people?
Well, the year before, at the 2001 Space Odyssey screening with the live orchestra, that's when I first met Ian Roscoe, Matt Mealy and Nathan Abrams. Right. So I knew them from that. We'd met there. So when I went back to the Kubrick season in April and May of this year, I met Matt and Ian again at most of these events. Yeah.
You will see many, many little details in the exhibition, things that you would normally not even be aware of. Drawings. Over 1,000 drawings were prepared, for example, for AI, artificial intelligence. A huge library of books on Napoleon. He was totally fascinated by this hugely successful, charismatic man. Now, you can also see, for example, technical things in the exhibition, lenses. He was so proud of the 50mm f/0.7 ultra-fast lens that Zeiss developed for NASA. He used it for Barry Lyndon because he wanted to create the atmosphere of the late 18th century. It meant lighting with candles, and it was very, very difficult to do, but he succeeded.
Of course, the big one this year was the Stanley Kubrick exhibition finally coming to London. And when it did, it made its way to the Design Museum in London. I know, Stephen, you went, and you're going to share some thoughts. We're also going to hear from our old friend Rod Mundy, perhaps Willem Hopman, if we can get him to get on the horn with us, talk about that. Ian Roscoe was there. Maybe if there's any other people in SCAS, we can reach out to them.
But yeah, eyewitness reports with you guys together, I bet you'll remember a lot of details, which will be really interesting for all of us who were deprived.
Well, I have a feeling it's going to come to New York sooner than later. We're obviously getting the 2001 exhibit at Museum of the Moving Image. We'll get back to that. But, after London, and I heard the Design Museum was, kind of a smaller version. The one they had in L.A., I had a friend, my friend Alicia Atella, was sending me photos from when it was in LA, and it was just huge. They had it at LACMA, at Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and you could tell there was just tons of square footage and people walking around. And from what I understand, the exhibit was kind of crammed into a smaller space at the Design Museum in London. Would you say that was the case, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't compare it with the other presentations of it, but I suppose the main telling thing that would make you feel that it was crammed into a smaller space was obviously it was set out. There was a main introduction area where you got kind of an overview of Stanley's kind of early life and how he got into the movies, and then you went through I guess you went through 13 different sections for the 13 feature films. They weren't in order, which I think was a good move. We ended, I think the end of the exhibit, the walkthrough exhibit was 2001. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Eyes Wide Shut would have been the end if they'd have done it chronologically. But I think that was a nice way. That seemed to work very organically. Mm-hmm. Did the chronology of of how the films were presented, but because it was an audio visual situation, you might be in the Eyes Wide Shut section, and you could hear Ollie Erme shouting from the Full Metal Jacket section. So I suppose at the time that didn't bother me. Because it was just like you're just taking the whole live event, and you realise. And for me, I was familiar with the sound of All the Army, so it wasn't too distracting.
At least if he was going like, "You get out of the way! I can't see her body. I want to see that masked woman fully nude. You extra, you extra boy, get out of the way." That would have worked.
Yeah. But I only mentioned the audio bleed into the different sections because I heard a few people kind of mention that was a downside to the event, which I think goes back to your point of it being in a smaller venue. So obviously, sound is going to bleed from section to section.
It's kind of like going to a movie theater, a multiplex now, anywhere USA.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
How many hours were you there, Stephen?
About 4.
That's a good long time for a museum.
Yeah. But no, it was fantastic. I think they did an absolutely brilliant job. And like I say, I haven't been to any of the other versions of the travelling exhibition. So to me, it was absolutely fantastic. There was a great entrance thing, which I think was new to this event, where you kind of walked towards a big screen, and there were smaller screens at the side. I'm not explaining this very well, but I'm sure you've all seen it on clips that have been posted. No, it was brilliant. I thought they did a brilliant job, really did. And they had some new things in there, like the car from A Clockwork Orange, the Durango 95. They had that on display, which has not been on display before. They also had the are they called the Dancing Jesus figures from Clockwork Orange? They had those original ones there.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So and they also had the big rocking white penis.
Yeah, of course.
Which has not been included before, so I was very excited to be in the presence of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did they have any of the cat lady's cats? I mean, they'd be pretty old by now.
No, I can't remember seeing any cat lady things.
The Egyptians mummified theirs, so, they could have kept them around.
Yeah.
What about a room on just Kubrick's family life? It was just the movies?
No, there wasn't a room on Family Life. No,
I would imagine they didn't. If they did that, it would have to be like in the bathroom, because there's a bathroom scene in every Kubrick film. It would his most personal.
Not every Kubrick film. I think
no,
maybe
not every Kubrick film.
Did we want to work this out? Is it maybe 10 out of the 13?
I think so. Yeah, we worked it out.
Which is a good run, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, that could be the best thing out of Dr. Sleep if they donate all the sets to the archives.
Oh God,
they could somehow do that.
No, inferior. No. I tried to get my friend Wendy to see if she'd pick up the phone. If we're going to do a Dr. Sleep segment, I wanted to get her on this call. Because she is so funny about it. She's like, "Oh, you won't even see it. Why are you criticizing it?" I'm like, "All right, so tell me about it." "Well, it starts off like this, and then it gets like that, and then I had a problem with this part." And I'm going to be like, "Okay, so you're just telling me why I don't need to see it."
So this is Wendy Torrance.
Wendy Bazile. Yeah, exactly. No, Wendy Bazile. I think that's how she pronounces her last name. She's that gal I mentioned I work with, and we're gonna get her on the show. She's super cool. She's one of us. You guys will love her. She's very pop culture savvy, just very down to earth, funny, smart. Loves Kubrick, music, movies, all things pop culture. And anyway. So all right, guys, then in May, there was a pretty cool scoop, rather a big deal, if you will. After Stephen read, mixed chapter Kubrick on Screen in the book, The Kubrick Legacy, we heard about a short film called Dreams That Money Can Buy, in which a young Stanley Kubrick actually appears on screen for a few brief moments. Who was it that scooped the story or first brought it to SCAS, James? Do you remember?
I think it was Mick Broderick, right?
Yeah.
Well, Mick picked it up from speaking to Anthony Fruin, Kubrick's assistant, when he was researching another book.
Can I just interject that if anyone's listening to the podcast, that they may want to pause it and simultaneously look at it? If you go to YouTube, to Stephen's page, the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society YouTube page, you could search. The whole title is Stanley Kubrick on Screen 1947, Dreams That Money Can Buy with Mick Broderick. So there's a number of ways you could search for it, or you could find the page first. But it's a 5-minute film, and there's a nice 5-paragraph description of it. And you can read that first and then come back to the podcast, or vice versa, or do the two at the same time. It might be better.
Yeah, well done.
Good idea. So, Mark, I want to hear what you were going to say about it.
Oh, I loved it. It was just an amazing find. And to me, it was very eerie to see Stanley and Toba when they were married, but also to have Ruth Sabatka in that same film. Mm. And then the film itself being an art film. I know that Kubrick watched every film that came out, both popular, and he would go to MoMA a lot. Mm-hmm. But I feel like one of his famous quotes is, "Films are a controlled dream." And that's exactly the premise of this film. And I feel like everything that an artist sees, it goes into their unconscious and it comes out again and again over the course of their career. So to me, this was a very interesting film to think about in light of his later career.
And Stephen was able to get the whole film, find the bits. I think there's about 4 different cuts, and it's really good quality. It's not some old grainy, squint to see him. You really see him, and he's young, and he's a handsome man. I mean, let's say Stanley is not exactly Cary Grant as the years went by. And, look at this young, handsome Stanley Kubrick.
I know. I thought the same thing. And when he was young like that, I have a few photos that are particular favorites from when he was in that age period. And he just had such cool hair. His hair just looked awesome. It's almost a shame that he started to thin, before he was even really a middle-aged guy. He was kind of thinning, but yeah, you see those pictures of him. I showed you that one when there's a photo of him. It's in the archives book, and it's when he was shooting Fear and Desire, and he's got on a pair of blue jeans, a black belt, a white button-down shirt, and a navy blue blazer. And I'm just like, Jesus, like that never will go out of style. That looked cool then. It looked cool on James Dean. It looks cool on people now. And there he is rocking it. And you just see him with his camera, and he's got that awesome hair kind of off to one side. Well, did anybody notice I just kind of put it out there and let it come and go because it was purely coincidental. But in the background, in one of the shots in Dreams That Money Can Buy, there's a frame, a very close-up of a framed photo or a painting of just a pair of eyes, and they have those deep bags under them like raccoon eyes, almost identical to a close shot of what Kubrick's eyes would look like in later life. And I remember doing a screenshot, cropping it, and then just kind of putting it in Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, like, anybody notice this? And it got a few notices, but it came and went as I expected. Because again, it wasn't like, oh, there's a conspiracy. They were, there's the Kubrick stare before he ever made a film,
Weird Al should do he's got Stanley Kubrick eyes.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea.
Well, somebody did Marty Feldman, though. That's already been done. Have you ever heard that parody? He's got Marty Feldman eyes.
That's genius.
No.
That's genius. I ain't got nobody. I ain't got nobody. I got me. Yeah, check. I was just watching Young Frankenstein a couple weeks ago. Oh my God, he was great. Didn't he do an episode of The Muppet Show, Stephen? Marty Feldman?
I'm not sure.
I think he was a guest on The Muppet Show once.
It could well have been.
Yeah.
He was around at that time, wasn't he?
Yeah. And not for much longer. He passed in the 80s. Like the early...
Yeah, in the 80s, yeah, I'd say.
So, anyway, well, we had another cool thing happen in May, of course, which was the re-release of Dr. Strangelove, but this time in 4K in cinemas. And I think it was mostly in the UK. James and Mark, do you remember seeing any news about theaters showing Strangelove in 4K here in the States?
No.
But Stephen did. Were you able to see it, Stephen?
Yeah, well, I think we just interviewed Matt Wells just before the release, and Matt did a short film that preceded the re-release. Yep. It was called Stanley Kubrick Considers a Bomb. So we interviewed Matt Wells, the British director. And shortly after that, I went back down to the BFI, which was still part of the Kubrick season, wasn't it? Because that was April and May. So I went down on the 17th of May. The film was released on the 17th of May. I went down on the 25th. And I watched Dr. Strangelove in 4K, after being obviously tipped off by Matt, who'd done the short film to introduce it, and it was brilliant. Obviously I'm very familiar with the film, seen it many times at home, but to see it not only in the cinema, but to see it as a really good print, a really good quality release, it was brilliant. And I found myself laughing at things that I'd never even found funny before. And there's quite a strange phenomena about going to the cinema and experiencing movies with others, which, it's been talked about a lot by people. But yeah, actually going and watching a film with an audience is really something to behold. And I appreciated the humour in Dr. Strangelove much more by watching this screening, on the big screen.
Yeah. Well, there were.
I suppose that was it.
Yeah, real quick, there were a bunch of moments. Mark was there with me at the showing of Barry Lyndon with the live orchestra, with Wordless Music Orchestra, and there were moments in Barry Lyndon that, elicited bursts of laughter from over 3,000 people that I'd seen before. Like you said, I watched it at home, but then I was like, oh yeah, that is really funny. And you knew they were already, but yeah, there's some kind of like a validation loop, I think, that happens.
What is it? I almost feel like it's an insincere situation. I mean, the same thing happened when I watched 2001 last year on the big screen with thousands of people in the audience when they did the live orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
And they were and Hal was just like cracking people up, and myself, and I was and I know I weren't just cracking up because I was hearing the man next to me cracking up, because I was almost ahead of him.
Right.
But I've never cracked up at Hal at home, so it's a really strange phenomenon about, is it funny, or are you just kind of nervously laughing because you've got people around you? I don't get it, but I genuinely found Dr. Strangelove and 2001 moments that I've never found funny before.
Yeah.
What is that? And same with Barry Lyndon. What's going on there? I don't understand.
Was
it a sellout, the 4K Strangelove?
Well, they did quite a few screenings there. The day that I went, it was in the NFT 2, which was a slightly smaller screen, and that was a sellout. But I think they showed it maybe 20 or 30 times during the season. Yeah. So I don't know if it was a sellout on everyone, but it seemed to be well attended every time I went down there. Did all the Kubrick screenings.
Well, and the opposite effect is I went to a Strangelove with a small crowd and nobody was laughing, and it made it seem not funny to me as well.
Yeah.
I was worried that the younger audience, they might not just get this kind of humor. Like, did you have to be terrified of World War III to really find it horrifically funny?
That's a good point, because I was with well, in fact, all the screenings I went to this year, there was mainly an older audience, my age and up. Yeah. It were nice to see some young people there who appreciated it, but generally they were older audiences. Yeah.
Well, when I saw 2001 in 4K last year, AMC properly did a 15-minute intermission, and when it happened, the house lights came up, and I realized there were about 6 or 7 young people, and they just took out their phones and they were like, What just happened? Is the movie over? And they went to the website to see the running time of the movie. Is that it? Wait, is it coming back? Because they brought up the house lights, and it's like, now's your chance to go to the restroom, folks. But these kids were like, with the default mode, I'm going to take out my phone, and it's going to give me the answer what's happening right now.
Well, I've got to say, I've taken my phone out occasionally in the cinema, not at a Kubrick movie I might add, but I've taken my phone out a few times to check on the running time and how long I had to endure this beast.
Like Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Of course. I knew it. How did I know? Dr. Snore. How about the Chittickbury Arts Fair? Hey, how about that Chittickbury Arts Fair, Stephen? Back in June 2019, I believe you finally got to rub elbows with Ms. K. and...
Yes, that was the first time I went down there. So for the listeners, the Chittickbury Arts Fair is...
it's a children. It's C-H-I-L. You're both dropping the L. Sorry, I'm being obnoxious.
No, you're being obnoxiously wrong. You don't pronounce the L.
It's like it's silent, even though it's there. It's like, what is that town in Massachusetts?
Yes, it's a silent L.
Ah,
it is Chittickbury, right?
Yep.
Worcester
is spelled Worcester, like Worcestershire sauce, but they they call it Worcester.
Yeah.
Oh, Worcestershire. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah.
I apologize.
Apologize unreservedly.
Accepted.
So, Stephen, you were there at the Chittickbury Arts Fair. Tell the listeners how cool that was.
That was very cool, Jason.
Yes.
It was such a cool time. I haven't had a cool time like that for many years.
I don't believe that.
But anyway, this year, on the 6th of June, this is an annual event that is called the Chittickbury Arts Fair, and it is held at the Kubrick Estate in Chittickbury, which is not far out of London. And I went down there this year as a person who wanted to visit. As just a day visitor, and it was nice to be there. I bumped into Katerina, Stanley's daughter. She had a jewellery making area. I also met Stanley's wife, because she's an artist, and she had like a painting area. And yes, it was good. I bumped into Mick Broderick. He was down there, the author of Reconstructing Strange Love. So it was a good thing.
You may need some new glasses.
Yes.
Bumping into a lot of people.
Who?
How big was the estate? If you can kind of quantify. I've only seen pictures. What was your reaction when you stepped on the ground? Like, wow, this is large? Or
yeah, well, it was a case of I got a taxi from the train station. So I started in London, because I'd been there the night before at the BFI, watching Dr. Strangelove, I think it was. So on the Saturday morning, I jumped on a train in London and went to Chittickbury. and then got a taxi to the actual estate, to the arts fair. You know, I said to the taxi driver, "Can you take me to the arts fair?" And he said, "Oh yeah, no problem." So I went there. So I drove up a long drive, kind of recognised things that I'd seen on a few documentaries of the estate. Now the area where the arts fair was kind of the front area of the estate. You know, we weren't in the area where the living quarters were, where everyone lived and hung out. But we did, what was that, a bleep? Oh, Jason took a snapshot. I'll edit that.
I just noticed your Christmas tree in the background. Oh, I didn't realize the audio was going to happen. Go on.
It's very eyes wide shut, isn't it, round here? So the arts fair itself was kind of in an area just before the house itself. It was lovely. It was nice. I just wandered around quite. I kept myself to myself, although I did, you know, obviously at some point introduce myself to Katerina. And she said, "Stephen Rigg, yes, you're Skaz, aren't you?" I said, yeah. So she recognised my name, so that was kind of nice. And like I said, I met Christiane, Stanley's wife. Had a little chat with her, but obviously I didn't want to make a nuisance of myself. It was great. I spent a couple of hours there, bumped into Anthony Adler and Mick Broderick. Yes. I didn't notice Ian there, but he was there, I believe. Okay. And Willem Hopman was also there, but I didn't see him at the time.
Were there a lot of dogs and cats and goats?
Nope, didn't see a single dog or cat.
How did it feel being there? Was it, did it?
It felt like I'd kind of got something out of my system a little bit, I think.
Uh-huh.
If I get the first front door, first thing I'd be like, "So, where's the drum kit?" I would. I wouldn't actually, but I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to ask if I were either a member of the public or a guest. I mean, come on. How cool would that be?
I'd just go up to Christian and say, "Christian, between you and me, where's the missing 17 minutes?" I swear I won't tell anyone.
I swear I won't tell anybody. And she goes over to a bookcase and she pulls one book out and the bookcase does a complete 180, leads to a secret passage.
Little boxes like Vivian's Full Metal Jacket.
Oh my god. Well, that's real quick, that while we're on the drums, the thing is, there has to be a recording of Stanley playing drums. There has to be. I don't understand how a guy could have played drums for as many years as he did, and nobody ever set up, a microphone, even if it was not, if there's not a recording of him playing with a jazz band, which we know he did when he was a young man. There has to be, that's one of those things I would, as a personal aside, I would just love to be able to hear that. Because they say he could swing. He wasn't just a timekeeper. They said he really understood. And again, as a lifelong drummer, that would be like a nice little chunk of gold just to hear it. Well, guys, and then in July we had a big event, a workshop at the Lorenz Center Leiden in the Netherlands. And the event was, I believe, called Stanley Kubrick Life and Legacy. Was Willem Hopman was there? And James, do you know anything? Can you add anything about that?
It was, what do they call them? Symposium, I guess? People just get together and for a few days, is that what they call those? Then
I think this was classed as a workshop.
Workshop, and 5 days in July in the Netherlands. Me and Stephen got invites. It was organized by Nathan Abrams, Michael Broderick. This is Michael. We know him as, yeah, it says Michael. Yeah, we know him as Mick. James Fenwick, Kate McQuiston, Eliza Pizzotta from Italy, Kate McQuiston from Honolulu. It says the aim was to ascertain the current state of Kubrick's studies and what the future direction of research looks like bringing together academics, artists, archivists, and scholars to discuss and debate, get closer methodologies and approaches to study and interpret Kubrick's career. Some of the people who went were Richard Daniels, Ian Roscoe, Howie Berry, Rod Munday, Simone Odino, Filippo Alvieri, Willem Hopman, Matt Malia, Robert Coker. And there were, at one point, Filippo tweeted or posted a photo of 31 people. And his caption was, "Look, there are women here too," which is funny because there is kind of that perception that it's the guys thing. But I looked at one time, there's statistics on what's the word they use? Analytics, they call it, for Facebook, and they could tell the gender. And I think we have 25% women in the Facebook group. And in that photo, there were 9 women out of 31, which is 29%. So and I'm only bringing that up because that was Filippo's point. It was like, look, there are women. And 2 of the 5 organizers were women. And Filippo pointed out that Scass was mentioned several times.
Yay.
And so here's some of the topics that they discussed: feminist approaches, biographical approaches, art historical approaches, archival approaches, the Stanley Kubrick art, Kubrick's correspondences, Kubrick's legacy, marketing and audiences, Kubrick's photography and photojournalism, Kubrick's early works, Kubrick's unmade films. Those were the topics. And I know that afterwards, one of Simone or Filippo or Rod or one of them was telling us that they mentioned Scass. You can go to the website, you can see who the speakers were. And Nathan spoke on Kubrick's photography and photojournalism. That I would be really interested in hearing about.
Me too.
Bunch of them. Filippo spoke about Kubrick's unmade films. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so do you guys want to talk at all about, Matthew Modine getting nominated for the president of SAG-AFTRA?
Working together is what we performers do. One of the first things we learn when studying for a profession in the arts is to look your partner in the eyes and tell the truth. It seems today that it is more and more difficult to understand who's telling the truth when there are so many lies being told. I know it's much easier to tell the truth than it is to lie. I began my professional acting career as a background performer. Over my career, I've had the extreme honor of working beside thousands of performers, singers and dancers, stunt and background performers, crew members, industry professionals, and some of the greatest filmmakers in the history of our profession. To say I have been blessed to have worked with so many artists would be an understatement. I've told you that I want to mend the divisions that exist within our union. I'm not so naive to think I could do this alone. I want to do this because division creates fear, and fear leads to fearful decision-making. None of us deserve a negotiation committee working from a position of fear. Confidence and courage are essentials for our union's success. Confidence and courage are essentials for every artist who enters into this unpredictable profession. As artists united in cause, we should always look to create and build opportunities for each other. This includes supporting and standing beside our sister unions. In the Membership First platform, we've provided the language necessary to restore and strengthen our union. We're all in this together. If we remember that, and if we all work together, we'll succeed together. Within the institution of our union, we must be vigilant to protect it against the influences of the individuals and studios that employ us. This potential exists. Together, we must never let any outside power influence or endanger our institution or our democratic process. It will be my honor to be in the position to represent you and the future generations of SAG-AFTRA. Our union's future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to those that creatively problem solve with transparency, wisdom, experience, and a little wit. What we know from our union's past, what I have seen over the course of my career, is that we have a powerful, yet imperfect union. What our union has achieved gives me hope that together we can make a more perfect union. Lastly, I want to say thank you to everyone who has worked so hard on our campaign. And I want to thank all of you for your endorsements, your encouragement, your donations, and your kindness. These are generosities that I will never forget. My name is Matthew Modine, and I wish all of you the best of luck.
So Modine ran for the president of the Screen Actors Guild. It was a really contentious nomination election process. He ended up losing to the incumbent, who is Gabriel Carteris, who was known an actress on Beverly Hills 90210, and they were accusing each other of all variety. I googled it, and I thought, because me and Stephen had this notion there was one controversy about it, but there were loads. They were accusing each other of all sorts of underhanded stuff.
Like what?
Well, here's one that I wrote down. There was a bit of a controversy in a Q&A session at an event, Q&A portion of an event, where Matthew Modine said, I'm going to win because I'm the only man running. And supporters of his two rivals leapt on this joke as proof that he's a misogynist.
Oh, boy.
A tape recording of the joke, however, shows that it got a big laugh and that critics took it out of context.
Of course they did.
What happened right after the laughter died down, Modine explained that at that point he was not the only man in the race. There were two other men in the race, but they were not invited to that particular event to participate in that town hall. And the organizers didn't invite those other two men because they figured they had no chance of winning. So Matthew said, "Sorry, I wish they could have had the opportunity to participate in this event." And a whole bunch of people came to his events and sent out a statement saying, "We deplore the politics of personal destruction that has been waged against Modine on social media." And it was signed a whole bunch of people, including Ellen Barkin, Rosanna Arquette, Janney, Diane Ladd.
So, Stephen, you got audio from the London Prop Store 2-day auction of original items from 2001: A Space Odyssey, Barry Lyndon, and The Shining that all went on sale. You've got audio that they sent you from that event. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh, that's so cool. We have to hear some of that.
Lot number 10. This is 2001: A Space Odyssey production used script with color revisions on there, and I can start the bidding with me straight away at 1600, 1700, I'm in at 1700, at 1700, 1800, 1900, 2000, now it's in the room and away at £2,000. At £2,000, is there any advance for the script? At £2,000 I have. At £2,000 it's here. Is there any advance at 2,000? £2,000 once. £2,000 twice. Are we done? Selling in the room then at £2,000, 287. Thank you.
Wow, I'm surprised none of those guys, did like the whole auctioneer thing with like, hey, I got a strange little bone, I got a bone, it's gonna fly up into the sky, bone's gonna fly up into the sky, it's gonna turn into a spaceship, got a little bone, gonna turn into a spaceship, can I get a 45 for the bone in the spaceship, 45 can I hear 50 for the bone in the spaceship?
1998, 2001, so.
Do that. Good one. 2001 going once, 2001 going twice, 2001 going 3 times. Sold to 2001 guy.
So we change movies now. So this is Barry Lyndon here. This is the coat from Barry Lyndon. Few bids on this. Everybody's had a look at it. I can go straight in 2,000, 2,500, 2,750, 3,000, 3,250, 3,250 at £3,500 now straight away. Straight away in at £3,500. 3,750, thank you online. 3,750, the bid is online now. Who's going to bid me 4,000 to go on? Thank you, sir. 4,000 I have now. At 4,000 at the back, 4,250. 4.5 now. 4,750. 5,000. 5,500. 6,000. 6,500. Do you want to go 7, sir? Are you sure? I've got 6.5 online then. You were on a bit of a roll then. You sure you don't want to go one more? No. Thank you for trying though. I have 6.5 online. Hammers up. Down it goes to you online. Well done. 5,173.
Here's Johnny, the Jack Torrance's, Jack Nicholson's hero axe, ladies and gentlemen. A very iconic piece of film history. It was bought by a member of the crew because he needed to chop logs. But he kept it, and he didn't chop his logs with it. But here it is. It's come out to play for ceremonial purposes, and we're selling and away at £80,000 we have. We're already at £80,000, ladies and gentlemen, at £80,000. Is there any advance? At £80,000 it is. At £80,000 for this piece of film history. 90 now. At 90 I have. Any advance at £90,000? 90 is my bid. At 90,000. Is there any? 95. 100,000. £100,000, ladies and gentlemen. 100,000. Do I have 110 anywhere? At £100,000. Telephone bidders, are you coming to play? At £100,000 I have. I've got £100,000. Once at 100. Twice at 100. 110,000. 120,000. We're there online. There's a small battle going on online at £120,000. They're slowly chipping up that bidding increments. 120 we have. 120 we have. Any advance at 120,000. 120 once. 120 twice. 130. 140. 140 it is. 140 it is. 140 it is. No, don't wait for me to bid and to count it down, but we're going to. Selling once. Selling twice. For the third and final time. My very own gavel is up and down at £140,000 and sold.
Also, guys, in October, we had The Shining in 4K make its way to the big screen. It also screened at the Cannes Film Festival. So Mark and I did get to see Shining in 4K. Mark, your takeaway?
Well, they had those really comfy chairs that you can recline in, and by the time I got reclined, the movie started and I saw that it was out of focus, but I was too lazy to unrecline and go back and talk to the projectionist. But I could, even out of focus, the sound was awesome and the colors were all perfect. No more pink tennis ball.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it sometime in focus.
The sound was amazing. That was my takeaway as well. The soundscape, the sound design of it, and the spatiality of it was just unbelievable in that theater. More so almost than the visuals, which we've taken in. How many times have we seen The Shining? That single element of the sound, and the new attention that was given to separating all the elements, putting them in their proper space was really, really something else. It was as well done as it was with 2001 in 4K, which again I saw last year. And what Criterion did with the mono audio of Barry Lyndon on the Blu-ray is just incredible too. But that's another thing entirely. Someone taking a mono soundtrack and spatializing it, creating a much more interesting use of even just the sound of like the horse's hooves on the cobblestone in Barry Lyndon was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I have to agree, the colors did look amazing. on the big screen and seeing it in 4K. Obviously, the last time I saw it was just a generic 35 millimeter print, but always happy to see The Shining. And it's funny because there's part of you, I don't know about you, Mark, but there's part of you that goes like, I forgot, this movie runs pretty long, it's well over the 2-hour mark. And then there's other part of me that's like remarking at the pacing and how well it moves along. And of course, we're talking about the American, not the European cut, for our listeners. But the fact that, with so much going on in the story, Kubrick really does move through all of it with exceptional pacing. And again, for a movie that's well over 2 hours, it's kind of like this weird paradox because it takes its time, but at the same time, you feel like it's moving right along. Does that make any sense, Mark?
Yeah, as I get older, I do experience the movies, the great ones, starting with 2001, more as musical performances than as something that I have to analyze as it's going on. I just basically experience it, and mainly a large part through the music and the editing.
Yeah.
And how they go together.
Well, we were hoping that was going to be something they would continue with, having some more screenings of it, but I think it really only happened 2 times in the span of 1 month.
And just to promote the nefarious Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to come to that, obviously, now, but that was the big thing, was they were telling you, there's going to be an exclusive about Dr. Snooze, and we're going to show it after The Shining, and we sat there, and it was like, all right, we just watched a 2.5-minute TV commercial.
There was probably people there just to see the
preview. Yeah.
They had to sit through 2.5 hours of some other movie.
Yeah, some other movie just to get to this nonsense. But I do remember overhearing at least one other group of people when you and I saw it together. It was one other group of people who was just, after the behind the scenes exclusive, they were just like, that was it?
Yeah.
I guess they expected like a half-hour documentary or something about it, but...
And little did they know they had seen the only good 2.5 minutes of Dr. Sleep.
There are 2.5 good minutes? Get out of here. I don't believe you. Wait a minute. Were those the two? Oh, I know which 2.5 minutes. The ones at the end? Like the very last 2.5 when the credits are rolling? So, all right, so let's come to that, because we're going to come back to this in another episode. Obviously, we're going to have some friends of the show come on, and we're going to just have a bit of fun with it. But, here's my thing. Like, I'm not, interested in seeing it. I'm never going to see it. What's really funny is the guy who cuts my hair, he said that he and his boyfriend, they're huge horror fans, and he said, well, we wanted to see it, because we love The Shining, obviously, and we were, skeptical that it was going to be any good. And at one point while he's cutting my hair, my friend Mark Bluestein saying, he and his boyfriend just considered it, an abortion. He said, and I know he meant to say an abomination. He kept saying, Dr. Sleep it's an abortion. It's an abortion. And I was like, I love the guy, so I didn't have the heart to correct him. I was like, yes, it is.
But you have just corrected him now if he listens to the show.
It's okay. No, I will tag him on this, because he does listen to the show. He's a great guy, and yes, he's a fan of the show. And I just thought that was so funny, because there was a Rush Job podcast some guys had put out, and I only listened to about 15 minutes of it. I forget who it was. I feel bad, because they had some really funny take on it. They were just reacting to what was obviously a very negative take on Dr. Sleep. And the one guy said to his podcast partner, I wish I could think of a nicer way to put it, but Dr. Sleep basically rapes The Shining. And I mean, of course he's not being literal. He's just using one of those social media, haha, I'm so clever kind of terms, but it was funny because I kind of knew what he meant. Like, just from looking at the trailers, I was like, you know, and I saved this one article. I'll send it to you guys. It was like, 19 reasons why, Dr. Sleep won me over. And it was the most nonsensical stuff. It was like, they gave, adult-sized big wheels to all the production assistants to ride around on the Overlook set. I'm like, that doesn't make it a good movie. Why are you posting this to the internet? Like, that's what won you over to me? Really? Like, you were some original first-generation Shining fan and you were really skeptical when you heard about a sequel. But then something about the fact that they gave everybody an iPad Pro with the full blueprints of the Overlook on it. Like, not in the movie theater, like people who worked on the show. Well, of course you'd give them that. It's called tools to do your job. Like, I don't understand why. It just seems to me like the most unnecessary sequel in the history of sequels. I love what you...
And you're saying that without watching it.
I won't watch it. I don't need to see it to know it sucks.
Right, who's seen it here?
No.
Mark, have you seen it?
No, honestly, I'm withholding judgment. My expectations are so low that I can only be happily surprised.
Yo.
So,
real quick.
So two of us have seen it.
Real quick. Late last night, I hopped on Scas and I saw James had responded to somebody's comment. It was like, it just made me want to go watch 2010. And I was like, ding, exactly.
Yeah.
That cracked me up. I was like, here he is. He gave it a shot, you know, and he's like, no, I think I'm going to go watch Peter Hyam's sequel because that's an actual good sequel.
I mean, I see bad. I despite my efforts to only see good movies, I'm very, you know, there's exponentially more movies in existence than you could possibly see in your lifetime.
It's true.
Everybody's discerning about what they choose to see, so I only try to see good movies. But I still see a lot worse movies than this. This wasn't that horrible.
Yeah.
You know, it was okay. There were parts that were okay, and there were parts that were ridiculously stupid. I mean, basically, it felt to me like The Shining 4. The end was like forced gratuitously, like revisiting the first movie.
Yes.
And that was like the last 15% of the movie. But the first 85%, it seemed way too much of a departure. It didn't seem like the first sequel. It felt like the fourth sequel. And it basically it came down to vampires versus ghosts.
Yeah.
The Shining, vampires versus ghosts.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But even that said, there was still, I see a lot worse movies from time to time. And it was okay. And I got to admit, it was cool, little bits here and there, because I love The Shining. It's like, oh, he referenced my movie. He referenced that movie I love. And it was a little cool. And then the ending, of course, they go back to the Overlook. I had thought that, you know, spoiler alert, if you didn't see the movie, don't keep listening. But I had thought that they were gonna. I thought everything. I knew they had scenes in the Overlook, but I thought it was going to be in visions and things like that. I didn't realize that they actually go back to it. And somehow it's unlocked. I don't know how. There were so many like things that didn't make sense. How the heck would you be able to get into, you know, go up a snowy mountain in your car and then go into a locked hotel? There were a lot of ridiculous things, but that was cool. But they had to have other every character you could think of from the first movie is back. Everyone.
That's just called fan service. That's what the kids call fan service.
And part of it, I was simultaneously like, oh, that's ridiculous, and oh, that's cool. So like, one side of my brain was like, this is so ridiculous, and one side of my brain was, but part of me liked it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't they apparently use some form of the word shine or shining like 8 to 15 times in the first 20 minutes of the movie just to remind people like, oh, this is about The Shining?
had another word for it. The vampire people called it something else.
Yeah, what do vampires like? Okay, so they eat the souls of people who have the shining. Like, what was Stephen King thinking? What does that have anything to do? Forget about Kubrick's film for a second, with his own source novel of like, he's all about, it's a writer and he's battling these demonic forces and he sacrifices himself to the boiler to save his family at the end. Like, what does a group of vampires who eat souls have anything to do?
Of that joke in Family Guy where they have one of the cutaways and they go, it's like, Stephen King's 75th novel, and they cut away to him meeting with the publisher.
Okay, for my 307th book, this couple is attacked by a lamp monster. Ooh.
You're not even trying anymore, are you? When can I have it?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
That's what it felt. Yeah, it didn't feel like, it's, what is it, his 80th novel?
And he's so disingenuous the way he says, like, I mean, I think Mark, didn't he see in that clip when he said, something like, well, I was always curious about whatever happened to Danny Torrance. Like, how many freaking characters have you created over the years? And you're all this time, it's been nagging at you that you never wrote the continuing story of Dan Torrance. Like, give me a break. It's so disingenuous.
He emasculates him. He's like a weak, wimpy person throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, so keep telling me why I need to see this movie.
He dies in the Overlook, and he turns into a ghost, and he has, I don't know, he becomes an alcoholic. So it was so important to King that the underlying story of his book was about fighting alcoholism, and Kubrick ripped that soul out of the story. Right. Now, what does he do with his next story? His continuation. He makes Danny an alcoholic.
Yeah. Good point. That's a good point.
When I was a kid, there was a place. A dark place. They closed it down and let it rot. But the things that lived there...
Hello, Danny.
They come back.
Come and play with us forever and ever.
Well, I mean, it's just I don't understand it. This is my biggest problem with it. You're deliberately trying to create a conclusion. You're providing an answer. And in doing so, Stephen King, you're missing the point of what makes Stanley Kubrick's version of your novel as discussed as every other Stanley Kubrick film for all these years. It's not about giving the viewer an answer. That's what we have Marvel movies for, or any other kind of movie. It's just like, here's the ending. It's all wrapped up in a bow. And Kubrick wanted you to have your own questions and have more of them to go off and discuss with, other people who enjoyed the work. And it just seems to me that it misses the entire point. That's why, again, I say the most unnecessary sequel, perhaps, in the history of films, is to just make a movie that's like, oh, he gave you a question, I'm going to give you an answer because I didn't like,
Yeah, but are we talking about the film or the book here?
I didn't read the book. Yeah, I don't know how much the director, but from what I understand, it was, King worked with him. I don't know. But
no, he did.
Dr. Sleep, in the movie at least, both the people with the Shining and the vampire people, they have a new superpower or ability. Now they can do this, and now they can do this, and every scene is something else they can do. I'm like, wait, you're just giving them that ability because you want it in the scene. How many different things can they do?
It's just, again,
basically Danny and Halloran could do was kind of have visions and talk to each other without opening their mouths. They didn't have all these superpowers, but in the new movie...
Right.
At one point, she orbits the Earth.
Oh, Jesus.
I swear to God, that scene. And then when they go into other people's minds, and their minds are a library. I mean, with drawers and Dewey Decimal System. Anyway, I'm babbling now. It's really.
I've seen it twice now, and I went in with a fully open mind. You know me, I'm quite open-minded. I went in with a very open mind. I went to the cinema and watched it, and then I watched it at home yesterday. I fell asleep both times. And I'm not even a doctor.
And you wonder why I'm calling it Doctor.
I'm not
Snore.
But I am not saying that film is bad, because I'm an eternally, open to these kind of things. And there's actually probably 3 different audiences for this film. There's a Stanley Kubrick Shining fans. There's the new audience that haven't got a clue about Stanley Kubrick Shining. And then you've got the middle ground that are slightly aware of it. Now, this film will appeal differently to everyone. To me as a Stanley Kubrick, to me as a film fan, it was just rubbish. But that is not an indictment on the film itself. What I'm trying to say is, for a new audience who know nothing about Stephen King, The Shining, or Stanley Kubrick, a new young audience who go and watch that, it's possibly a good film.
No, but okay, well, real quick, if that's the case, because let's keep it real, those are the people who are driving box office sales these days. It's not the geezers and the pensioners like us. It's these young kids. If they're the ones who are open to it, why has the movie tanked at the box office? Why did Dr. Sleep not even make its money back?
Oh, I've no idea. I didn't know that it had tanked. Has it officially tanked?
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's probably not great word of mouth. There's a lot of silliness in it, and a lot of things like I was saying. How can they be doing that? How can they be doing this?
Right.
It's a little bit silly. It's okay. Like I said, I've seen a lot worse. But one last point I would like to make is that by reading the group all the time, and I just want to be careful, because there's people. I'm sure you're going to edit a lot of this out. I don't know if even this would make it in, but just even to tell you guys, there are Kubrick fans and Kubrick fanboys, and there's sycophants, and there's, if a lot of people will hate us, just love Stanley so much that they'll hate it just because, like, how dare you make a sequel? And there were a couple. I said there's no more arguments. There's still some arguments on the group, and there were a couple of arguments. And people somebody was saying there's so much anger on this group, and sometimes it's true. There are some people who will not. How dare you? Like, that's my Stanley, and don't you dare?
Right.
I really don't want to bash Dr. Sleep and sound like I'm one of those.
No, me. I'm the same. Jason comes across that way.
I do. Absolutely. Absolutely. This movie is an abortion. It's an abortion. Tell me again why I need to see it, because what I'm trying to say is, everybody who's seen it that had favorable things to say about it could not help but include, but I had a problem with this, and that was really kind of lame. Like, the thing that came back when they've got a guy who looks like Jack Nicholson as Lloyd, and now he's Lloyd the bartender.
He didn't, only the haircut. He didn't even look. Go ahead.
And it's Henry Thomas from E.T., and it's his dad, and he's like, "You're my father," and he's like, "No, I'm the bartender here," and somebody showed me a screenshot of that, because they know I don't care about spoilers. I'm not averse to knowing, and I wasn't gonna see it anyway, and I was just like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know. I do think there's something funny in the idea of, if people want to come at me and be like, but you won't even see it, I'm just going to be like, I don't need to see it to know that it sucks. Because here's my whole thing. Kubrick, my introduction to a lifetime of enjoyment of Stanley Kubrick all goes back to The Shining, and me being 11 and a half years old when it was first broadcast on UHF channels out of, I think Staten Island or Long Island around here. And I remember seeing it on an old television set in my house and in my neighbor's living room. I have clear memories of being very young and seeing it. And I was just hypnotized by it. I didn't even know if I loved the movie or what it was I liked about it. I just had to leave it on. I loved all those tracking shots down the hallways long before I understood anything about cinema. And my love for and affection of The Shining as a piece of art has only grown so much over the years that, yes, I will admit I am deathly afraid that if I see Dr. Sleep, it will prevent me from unseeing the things I don't like about it and how that will tie into Kubrick's, one of his masterpieces. I don't want that to happen.
All right. I understand that. I like 2010.
I do too.
I like Adrian Lyne's Lolita.
Yeah,
So
I
do
do.
I.
Yeah.
So do, yep.
To insert one quick little thing, we don't have our list because it fits here, but another event was somebody made a movie that's an adaptation of Fear and Desire. Now, Fear and Desire is not based on a source novel. Kubrick wrote it he wrote the screenplay. It's an original screenplay.
Right. I don't think anybody's ever ready to fight in a war. I think we do it instinctively in order to survive.
Hey, Private Paparazzi. Since you have a weapon, stay close to us, alright?
Look, with your shotgun, you can end someone's life. With my camera, I can make them live forever.
What's wrong with the truck?
This is the outpost from which we left this morning. We traveled about 6 miles or so to the enemy line. Then about another 6 miles or so, I would say we broke down about right there.
So it's called Downriver, and I know this is going to be terrible, but I'm going to watch it just out of curiosity. Views were it is worse than terrible. It's amateurish, and technically it's a 2018 movie, but I just heard about it. We just heard about it a couple weeks ago, and I downloaded it, and I'm going to watch it. It looks really bad.
Oh my gosh.
There's also the curiosity factor.
That's the perfect segue to Virginia Leaf.
Well, that was the thing I was going to say. We did lose her in November, on November 4th. Virginia Leaf, or is it Life? I'm not sure. She passed. Of course, for us Mystery Science Theater 3000 fans, or Misties, as we call ourselves, she was also Jan in the Pan in the classic the classic The Brain That Wouldn't Die. And I just want to add that this film, which is called The Brain That Wouldn't Die, at the very end credits, right when it goes to the final credits, it says, the title card accidentally says The Head That Wouldn't Die. That's the kind of B movie we're talking about here.
Her brain kept alive by experimental science, by a man whose abnormal passions inspired him to try the impossible.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
Yes, and what of her soul? How can you make of her an experiment of horror? His mad ambitions and desires threaten every woman possessing an attractive body. Girls whose measurements make them beauty contest participants. Professional figure models such as this. All are prey to his distorted desires.
What's locked behind that door?
Horror. No normal mind can imagine. Something even more terrible than you.
Horror has its ultimate, and I'm that.
Behind that door is the sum total of Dr. Courtney's mistakes.
He intends to kill somebody. To rob them of their body. We've got to stop him.
And she was phenomenal in it, and of course she was, able to make a living in a number of those kinds of films, I think, after Fear and Desire. And it was one of those things, I think, for a period of time there where she really wasn't, obviously had no presence on social media, where you hear that she passed away and you're like, she was still alive?
She was so beautiful in Fear and Desire, like she's movie star.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I remember, I don't know, James, if it was your thought originally, but quite some time ago when Fear and Desire came up in SCAS, and I think it was you, I recall seeing a comment that was like, yo, you know what, the movie really does work if you kind of take it as a lost Twilight Zone episode.
I said, because that's how I feel.
I thought that was a really good point, because that, you know, well, it's well said, and that does help to unlock a kind of a newfound appreciation, especially for those of us who already love the Twilight Zone and may have struggled with an appreciation for Fear and Desire.
Okay, some of the acting is a little. It's okay. He was learning.
Yeah,
I've seen early, like, lost first films by a bunch of like David Lynch, The Grandmother. I remember.
And The Alphabet.
The Cronenberg, something by Jim Jarmusch called Permanent Vacation.
Wow.
Things that you think you've seen the first one, and then you find out, no, he made a student film.
Yeah.
George Lucas did that. He did an earlier version of
THX 1138. Yeah, he did a whole early version.
Kubrick should have been all that embarrassed by it, but
I agree.
It was interesting what Nathan recently said about Fear and Desire, which was the fact that Nathan's take on it is that Kubrick disowned that film because it showed too much of his hand. I think that's how he described it, which is basically saying that he kind of revealed his thought process too much.
Yeah,
rather than,
I love that.
You know, rather than the ambiguity that we all love.
Right.
It was too on the nose, I think, is the point, maybe. It kind of makes sense. When I heard Nathan say that, it kind of made sense.
Well, Kubrick said they had good ideas, they just didn't know how to dramatize them. Which, that's also true. That's the pragmatic look, but I like how Nathan said it. You have to disguise those things. You can't be blatant with them.
Yeah.
I stumbled on a documentary, James. I wonder if you ever saw it. It just popped up on my YouTube feed, but I can send it to you because you guys mentioned the early works of some of these directors. Scorsese made a film where he basically just talks with his parents.
Yeah,
Italian American.
Great film.
It is interesting. And then he did, you know, of course who was the one who did the student film that was De Niro's first movie?
De Palma did.
It was De Palma, De Palma.
It did The Wedding Party, which was kind of a studenty type film.
The Wedding Party, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, there's kind of a weird, you know, there's a great book called Easy Riders, Raging Bulls.
Oh yeah,
Peter
Biskind. Yeah,
Peter Biskind, and it covers the Hollywood Revolution that happened, and there always seems to be a bit of some outlying going on in the likes of Cronenberg and Brian De Palma. I mean, they had some really successful movies, even box office successes. Cronenberg's remake of The Fly was definitely a box office hit. And that's a Brooks Films, by the way. Mel Brooks was the executive producer.
Yeah, that's
forget.
Right,
yeah.
As was The Elephant Man.
And exactly, and The Elephant Man, David Lynch. I mean, that was all Mel Brooks. God bless him. And, you know, and people forget De Palma directed Mission Impossible.
Yeah. That was his first kind of big Hollywood... Well, I suppose The Untouchables was his first big Hollywood movie. And then he took a few years out, didn't he? It went back to like Raising Cain and some of the other smaller ones.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible, that was kind of really un De Palma to me.
Yeah,
but I mean, still is to me. It still don't feel like a De Palma film.
It is in the same sense that in Cronenberg's work you have movies like Eastern Promises and History of Violence, which I love that film.
Two great films.
But it doesn't feel like a David Cronenberg film at all when you compare it to Scanners or Videodrome or what was it, Sisters, or was that De Palma? No, that was De Palma. And De Palma made movies like Body Double. That was him, right? And then Body Heat. Who was Body Heat?
Kazdan.
And Blowout.
Blowout.
That was a good De Palma movie from about 1982 or something, weren't it?
Yeah. But those guys have that kind of outlier status when you read the Peter Biskind book and you realize that, you know, the core group of Spielberg, Coppola,
Scorsese,
Lucas, and, you know, a couple others, they really were the ones who changed the game from Hollywood from the inside out. But there really were a whole bunch of others. I mean, John Landis was a stuntman, and he was just making films for his own amusement and having fun with it. John Landis ended up making, you know, some big box office hits, Coming to America. He did Michael Jackson's Thriller video.
Trading Places.
Trading Places
Blues
was
Brothers,
a big
Animal
hit.
House.
The
most successful comedy ever.
Then that group that never really became big was Monty Hellman. I didn't realize he directed the Kubrick, the Stanley's Girlfriend.
Yeah.
What was this?
So
say that again?
In that whole early 70s, the group of people you were just naming, there was a movie called Two-Lane Blacktop.
Oh, yeah.
Monty Hellman was the director, and he seemed like he was also gonna
break out,
but it never really worked for him. And he did direct like 10 movies. But there was a movie called Trapped Ashes, which was like one of those movies that was like 4 different movies. What do you call those? I don't know what you call that. And there's like episodes within the movie.
Like the Creep Show.
Yeah.
One segment was called Stanley's Girlfriend, and the character is clearly based off of Stanley Kubrick. He's not Stanley Kubrick in the episode, but his name is Stanley, and you could tell it's supposed to be Kubrick.
The segment I'm doing is a speculation on what reasons Stanley Kubrick may have had for leaving Hollywood and spending the rest of his working days in Europe. Well, first of all, the film has a number of different styles, which is common when you have an anthology. And our story is probably the most realistic, as opposed to, you know, some of the ones that are very, very surreal and fantastic. So we have a story that seems to be reality that then becomes very amazing and fantastic. So the style throughout the bulk of it is real, and then, you know, we go into a kind of a flashback that gives us a completely different picture.
What's your name? I'm Stanley. Nice to meet you.
He'd seen a low-budget thriller I'd written. It was about a teenager who pretended to crash his bicycle so older women would take pity on him and let him into their homes. Then he strangled them.
I actually met Stanley Kubrick briefly in about the same period as our story. And I wanted to cast someone who had a physical resemblance, because I'm very reluctant to do biographical stories because it's so difficult to make them real. So I wanted some kind of reality there, but more importantly, I wanted someone who was psychologically like Stanley Kubrick, who could really, that we would believe was not only a genius, but had, you know, such self-confidence at such an early stage in his career, and not only believed that he would be a great director, but believed, you know, knew inside that he was a great director. So I wanted someone who had that authority and conviction and intelligence and just the aura of Stanley Kubrick.
Okay, so, all right, so then later on in November, winding down 2019, guys, of course, we did learn that Eyes Wide Shut's re-release was accompanied by Matt Wells's short documentary, Never Just a Dream, and Stephen got to see that, I believe, the 29th of November. And you have any thoughts about that, Stephen?
Yes, it was really great to see Eyes Wide Shut on the big screen again. I did see it on its original release in '99. But this time, seeing it on the big screen was absolutely fantastic. It was nice to see Matt's short film beforehand. And yeah, it was, as we say, all films are better on the big screen. And although, you know, most of us get bogged down with watching things on our TVs at home, it's such a treat to get out there and see a film on the big screen the way it was designed. Because all these old directors that we like, they were composing their shots and making their films and editing their films based on a big vision. And for us to see them on the TV, we're not getting the original intention. So, yeah, it was great to see it on the big screen. Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing
I can imagine
about the big...
Go on, Mark.
About the big screen is you're trapped with that film for 2.5 hours, and it's not it's not divided up into segments like a TV show would be, where you can go to the bathroom or something, or it's designed as an uninterrupted experience, and you only get that if you see it in the cinema.
Yes.
Right. Speaking of which, keep chatting. I need 30 seconds for a pee break. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I had something that wasn't on the list. I guess it's a good spot to insert, and it's a little minor thing. Remember when Jane Fonda was being arrested? So they have that the BAFTA annual, I guess their version of like the Oscar, the Academy Award.
Oh yeah, tell us about that. You texted that earlier. I don't know anything about this. What was this Jane Fonda thing?
So they have that. They have the Stanley Kubrick Award every year. It started like 5 years ago.
Yeah, Matt Damon won it last year or the year before.
Yes, he did.
So Jane Fonda won, and Jane Fonda has been at these, I don't even know which protests about something, but she got arrested several times. She got arrested and she went back to the protest and got arrested again.
Recently?
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And so she's you could go on YouTube. There's a video of her being handcuffed, and then news cameras are on her. And she says, "Oh, and by the way, I wanted to thank the British Academy, the BAFTA, for giving me the Stanley Kubrick Award."
It's great. It's awesome.
I'm receiving the Stanley Kubrick Britannia Award for Excellence in Film. I'm so honored. I can't even believe it. I'm so grateful. It's thrilling. And I'm sorry I'm not there, but as you may have heard, I've been getting arrested. I decided that I needed to do more, and so I've moved to D.C. for 4 months and trying to heighten the sense of urgency that there needs to be.
Tell me what democracy sounds like! This is what democracy sounds like!
This is a crisis, not just here, but all over the world.
Thank you, BAFTA!
And anyway, that's why I'm not with you tonight, but it's for a good cause, and my heart is with you, and I'm so grateful. Thank you very, very much.
BAFTA, thank you! Thank you for the Stanley Kubrick Britannia Award for Excellence in Films. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm not there. I'm very honored.
Okay, guys, and then in early December, we had the release of a film called Sparks in the Dark. I know James, you, and Stephen both got to see it. Tell the listeners about what you thought.
Well, it's technically a film it came out late 2018, and it's we found it in this month, and because I've been looking for it, and you know how I like to hunt things down, and I get so I finally found it's a production of Turner Classic Movie in Spain. For some reason, I guess the people who came up with the idea and it's sponsored by, they got the permission of the Kubrick estate, and they made this 20-minute film, which is brilliant. And what it is, it's animated. It's a cartoon, but it's really beautifully animated. And they got Keir Dullea. So this is what Keir Dullea was telling you personally, Jason, like a year and a half ago, I think it was, when he said, "Yeah, I just did this vocal thing." This is what he was talking about.
Right, right.
You could maybe speak to that a little bit when I'm done, but it's called 2001 Sparks in the Dark. Not sure why that's the title, but it's Keir Dullea. It's a cartoon of Kubrick sitting on a sofa being interviewed, and it's the Playboy 1968 interview. So they're taking the transcript of that article, magazine article, that interview, and so they have some generic man sitting there who's the interviewer, and Keir Dullea does the voice of Kubrick, and he's doing all these fantastic quotes about what are some of the favorite, you have to, throughout this darkness, you have to find your own light. And
Yeah, from the Playboy interview.
Yeah.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
It's been at a few film festivals, and it's up for, it won an award. And I've been waiting for them to show it here in the States, but it's been over a year and they haven't shown it yet.
Yeah.
At this point, I'd buy, and I've looked, I bought it if I could.
Right,
it's
right,
not
right.
available. It's actually a Turner Classic Movie production. It's doing, but it was on a few days ago. They're having a special, like, late December, leading up to the holidays. They're showing a whole bunch of documentaries that are film related on TCM Spain. So they re-showed it. They've shown something else. But I sent it to Vincent LaBruto, who's the biographer of Kubrick, the other day, and he watched it and he said, it's a great idea that they used the setting of the Playboy interview, which touched so heavily on 2001. The film has an otherworldly feel to it. The computer graphics are excellent in that it evokes Kubrick, but yet transcends his external being into his philosophy on the universe. Keir Dullea, who was such a dear man, did a great job. He had such admiration and love for the film and for Kubrick. The music reminds me of Philip Glass a bit, and the slow motion images of the children at the end evoked a Jeffrey Reggio film. In the end, this becomes more of an interview, but a way of showing how the film, I think he meant it becomes less of an interview, but more of a way to showing the film concerns life and space. The stills of Kubrick at the end connected with the man himself. Great job by these filmmakers. Now, Jeffrey Reggio did, what was that?
Kainakatse and Payenekwatse and Baraka, was it?
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever said those words out loud.
You knew about this before any of us. Tell us about when Keir told you, Jason.
Wow.
I just remember that he was, when I asked him if he was working on anything, he did mention that, I don't recall saying, anything specifically Kubrick related. He just offered that he was working on a new documentary, that he was going to narrate. He might have said in the voice, I think he did say in the voice of Stanley Kubrick, or he was going to be reading that part. He might have asked me if I was familiar with the 1968 interview in Playboy. That's about as much as I remember, but, he sure sounded like he was, happy to still be doing, things related to 2001. And, did you guys see that thing that Willem Hopman posted in his group from I think it was WPIX? James, you must have saw that. He posted, a video of, it was like something night at the movies, like Friday night at the movies that Channel 11 used to have, or maybe it was WOR Channel 9. They had,
No, but I'm going to look for it.
Oh man, it has full introductions of Keir in like late 70s, early 80s. He made an appearance on PIX when they were going to show 2001: A Space Odyssey with limited commercial interruptions. One of those things from back in the day, and they had him, and Keir's got like kind of longish hair, and you could see he was going great.
I saw that.
Oh, it was so cool.
Hi, I'm Keir Dullea, a member of the Channel 5 Movie Club. Tonight, we're in for a rare treat, thanks to WNEW-FM and the Channel 5 Movie Club. 2001: A Space Odyssey is probably the most widely referred to movie of the past 2 decades. It's the film that set the standards for most science fiction pictures which were to follow. It greatly influenced directors and producers like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. It is the predecessor of Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, War Games, and a host of other movies. You know, when 2001 was first shown in 1968, it was dismissed by some of the critics. It confused many audiences. But today, the story seems clear as crystal. The ideas are easy to grasp, and the effects are nothing short of dazzling. Prepare yourself for a visit to the dawn of man, a trip to the moon, a voyage to Jupiter and beyond, some encounters with monoliths planted by a higher force, and a face-to-face struggle with HAL 9000, a computer with murder on his mind. You'll also witness my own personal transformation by a supreme being into the Star Child, perhaps the single most exciting vision created by Arthur Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. Later, during an intermission, I'll tell you a bit more about the making of 2001. Now, tune in your FM stereo set or Walkman to WNEW-FM at 102.7, switch all your TV sets to Channel 5, and have a multimedia event in your own home like never before. 2001: A Space Odyssey will be shown with limited commercial interruptions and begins after these messages.
2001: A Space Odyssey will be shown with limited commercial interruptions and simulcast in stereo on WNEW-FM 102.7.
I don't know how Willem found that. For me, that was one of the highlights of 2019. Oh, did I just say 2019? I meant 2019. He found that God knows where, but I was like, because it brought back a tidal wave of childhood memories of seeing stuff like that. Back when you had, and they would have like a stereo simulcast, you know, certain TV shows. And I believe that was actually, if you watch out for Willem's clip, that find of his has Keir doing a full introduction, and then at the intermission.
I was finishing up work on Bunny Lake is Missing in London in 1967 when I visited a fun fair at Battersea Park. There was a palmist who looked at my hand, and he said he saw a spaceship. Well, the very next day, I received a call from Stanley Kubrick inviting me to appear in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Stanley is a genius. He's a Renaissance man. I was in great awe of his pictures by that time. Dr. Strangelove, Lolita. So working with him was a great pleasure. Actors, I don't think ever get really defensive with him because we have total trust in him and his ideas. The most memorable scene for me was the one you will see shortly when I blast myself from the vacuum of space into the emergency pod bay. There was a horizontal set which was constructed upside down, and I was suspended by a piano wire balanced by one circus roustabout. I think you'll find the scene very effective. After the film, I'll tell you my thoughts about its spectacular conclusion. Our special Channel 5 Movie Club showing of 2001: A Space Odyssey is a stereo simulcast of WNEW-TV and WNEW-FM. Back to the picture after these messages.
In a moment, the final sequences of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
And, you know, he's just very articulate. You can tell he either wrote his thoughts beforehand or, you know, was just very well-spoken in the moment. Maybe they did a few takes, who knows, but it was great to see him, you know, I think he's got like polyester blazer on, and he's talking about working with, and, you know, of course, at this time when he made it, you know, Kubrick was still very much alive. He's talking about it ebulliently. It was just cool. I really liked it.
In a moment, final comments by Keir Dullea and the closing credits of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Making 2001: A Space Odyssey was a subjective experience for Gary Lockwood and all the other members of the cast. While we were briefed on our own characters in great depth, we weren't familiar with all the effects or the story or philosophy during the shooting. We saw the film the way you did 15 years ago, or this evening. Awestruck, thrilled, confused, and delighted. Perhaps we can look at 2001 as the greatest birthday film of all time. The birth of man, the rebirth of man into the next stage, symbolized by the star child returning to Earth at the conclusion. The clues are all there. Haywood Floyd wished his daughter a happy birthday from space. Poole's parents called him from Earth to wish him a happy birthday. And during HAL 9000's lobotomy, he mentioned his birthday. However one approaches the picture, it is one to remember, and I'm proud I was a part of it. Next week, the Channel 5 Movie Club presents Sean Connery, Donald Sutherland, and Leslie Ann Down in The Great Train Robbery, a delightful Michael Crichton thriller that will take us back to the 19th century. Thanks for joining me for this special stereo simulcast. This is Keir DeLay. Good night.
Archivio Kubrick has posted, watch this space. Dear English-speaking friends, watch this space. I guess they're going to announce the book in English soon. That one I definitely want to get my hands on. I expect it will be a good read.
Yeah, between the two of them, I'm sure they got some good stuff. I always am completely content when I'm in Kubrick's universe. I'm in good hands. Something good is always going to happen.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally. All right, well, I guess on that note, thank you for the music, the songs I'm singing.
Thanks
for all the joy we're bringing. Who can live without it? I ask in all honesty, what would life be? Without a song or a dance, what are we? So I say thank you for the music, for giving it to me. That's such a beautiful, I don't care. I love punk rock, and I love ABBA too. Fuck me. I don't care.
Right.
Oh, good stuff, guys. Good stuff. All right, Stephen, go make your magic.
Yeah.
Madness.
Thank you,
I'll do my
guys.
best.
You guys did great, as always.
Well done.
Tatty bye, fellas.
Okay,
Indeed.
cheers.
All right, go get some rest.
Indeed.
Bye.
See you in cyberspace.
Quit.
Forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
And look very small. And look very small. And look very small. And look very small. This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
This forced perspective makes Stephen look very small.
Tiny.
Look very small. Look very small. Look very small. Look very small.
Tiny. 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 Shit. I guess we should let him get off to the pub.
Sounds good. Maybe there's some zombies there he can kill.
Shit. I guess we should let him get off to the pub.
Sounds good. Maybe there's some zombies there he can kill.
Shit, I guess we should let him get off to the pub.
Sounds good. Maybe there's some zombies there he can kill.
Shit, I guess we should let him get off to the pub.
Maybe there's some zombies there he can kill. 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 Super.
Excellent.
Super.
Excellent.
Super.
Excellent.
Righty there.
Excellent.
Righty there. Righty there.
Excellent.
Righty there.
I quite like this band. What do you think?
Yeah, no, they're good. They're pretty good. Drummer's good. I feel like I've seen that piano player there before. Maybe I jammed with him. Dick something? Dick.
Dick.
Dick Dutton? Dick Dale? What is
Dick Dale? Dickhead.
Dickhead, yeah. No, Nick. Nick, it was. Yeah, I definitely know that asshole. Didn't you say he plays at that dodgy club downtown?
Yeah, that's the guy, isn't it?
What is it, the Sayonara Club?
The
Sonata.
Sonata, yes.
The Hyundai Sonata.
Yeah, well, I bet it's about 6 months since we were down there.
Yeah. But last time I was in the neighborhood, I had to go to that really weird costume shop.
Oh, Millich.
Yeah, Millich.
Weirdo, that fella.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. The band's going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
And I went to the Hyundai Sonata Club, and I had to take a cab, even though they're right next door to each other. It was weird.
It's a small town, really, isn't it?
It is. It's only, like about a block or so.
Yeah.
Really tiny. Yeah, sure. Okay, we're asking everyone who enjoys our shows to please give it a rating and/or a review. We make this show and bring it to you out of nothing but love for Stanley Kubrick and his unfailingly passionate fans. We do it on our own time, and we do it on our own dime. So, pretty please, be passionate enough to just take a moment and share your rating or review of Kubrick's universe. We care very much about bringing this show to you, doing it right, and doing justice to the legacy of our favorite filmmaker in this brave new digital world. And your support means we can keep going. Keep new content, interviews, and episodes coming. It really does matter. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Please take a minute to just say, you dig it?
It was real nice talking to you. Bye. Over and out.
It's Kubrick's universe. We just live in it.
We have taken very thorough precautions in this podcast against broadcasting anything which might only be attributed to human error.
Thank you for listening to the Stanley Kubrick podcast.
These guys aren't scientists. They're making it up as they go along.